Hello, everyone. Recently, I sat down with some amazing women in cybersecurity to hear about their journeys and some of their struggles as they got their first roles and grew their careers in the industry. The amazing women I spoke with are Ashley Sikora, who's a senior technical trainer and adjunct professor. Ashley is also the founder of a DEF CON group called DC 575. She's a fourth degree black belt in Taekwondo, so don't mess with her at all. And you can find her either playing Nintendo, where she's a super fan, or chasing around what she calls the world's cutest corgi. You can connect with Ashley over on LinkedIn. I also spoke with Megan Jacot, who's a cybersecurity threat intelligence analyst. She's also the president at the YSYS Mid-Atlantic affiliate. Megan is a individual that's passionate about helping others. She's a former teacher, and you can often find her speaking at a wide range of security conferences. Megan sits on the board of the Breaking Barriers Women in Cybersecurity organization, and she also has a ferocious chinchilla. You can connect with Megan over on LinkedIn, as well as her YouTube channel or Twitter at Carpe Diem Tech. I also spoke with Alma Renaz, who describes herself as a recovering classroom teacher, survivor of coding boot camps, and a cybersecurity advocate. Alma has a background in international relations, and she currently works in the GRC space. She's involved with a number of cybersecurity organizations, and you can connect with Alma over on LinkedIn or her Twitter. And last but certainly not least, I spoke with Jennifer Bate, who's a senior network pen tester as well as a web app pen tester. Jennifer came from a background in electrical engineering, and she's also a military veteran. She was an officer in the Air Force. So thank you, Jennifer, for your service. Jennifer holds a number of certifications, especially from SANS, and she came into cybersecurity from what she likes to call Mission Impossible, or what other people call just raising your kids. Jennifer works with a number of organizations and volunteers, especially to help veterans. She's also an avid runner and hiker, and you can connect with her over on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's jump right in and listen to all of the wisdom that these women are sharing with you. Military to martial arts to now a trainer. So what got you interested in a cybersecurity career to begin with?
I've always been kind of a tech nerd. I think when I first came out of high school, at the time, the only options were computer science or IT. And, there wasn't like a cybersecurity focus per se. So I kind of bounced around, I did like regular IT work, did a little bit of desktop support, and the Army actually paid for my Security Plus cert. And that kind of like, kicked off the idea like, oh, this is like the most interesting thing ever. We had done Cisco stuff and I could do it, but it didn't speak to me like security did. And so around 2014, 2015, I pretty much decided everything that I will do will be to move me towards something related to security and eventually cybersecurity. So end of 2017, I went to a veterans training with Palo Alto Networks. And that's actually what got me into like a real cybersecurity job. I was working in a SOC. It was a contract position. It was okay. It was definitely the work I wanted to do, but the company culture and values didn't match what I wanted. And, I get to Palo Alto Networks and they took a chance on me and they had me start as a trainer. I did some professional services after that. So really learned the NetSec piece, really started to understand where cybersecurity plays a role in solving business problems. From there, moved into sales just to like say, oh, what's cybersecurity sales like? And I was pretty successful. We were still having those SecOps conversations, but the money was better. And then I decided to come back to actually doing technical training again, but this time I specialize in security operations. And so now I'm able to have those conversations both with our internal and our partners to help them better understand the needs of our customers and really where the SecOps space is going. And so, at 33, I never thought I'd be, representing, such a big company and, thriving in cyber. But I think with my personality and like, especially when I was growing up, I was definitely like a weird kid, like obsessed with the internet. So the fact that here I am and I made a job out of it, like I can pay my bills being obsessed with what happens on the internet. I never thought that was possible, but that's, I'll never go back. Like you can't get rid of me from cybersecurity. It would take a lot for me to leave. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
Nice. So Jen, you came Air Force, military officer, you did the parenting thing, and now you do pen testing. So that's kind of an interesting transition. So what got you first interested in cybersecurity?
Yeah, tell me about yourself takes longer than it used to, but I do need to tell the whole story because it is just such an accident that I'm even sitting here right now. Like you said, I'm a pen tester, I work for Deloitte. Cybersecurity is my second career, third if you count being a mom. And my first career, I have a double E degree from Michigan. And my mom was a calculus teacher, my dad was an engineer. So what else are you going to do, right? It just seemed really normal. I was looking for adventure after I got my degree and I got my commission in the Air Force and worked in another field, another technical field, and served for about 6 years before getting married to another Air Force person. And we began to navigate that dual career family thing. We were not living where we wanted to live, and we both got out. You quit your job, right? You quit your job when you leave the military. So he got the job in San Diego. We moved out here. He's software engineer, and my transition didn't go that well. I said, I need a different career, but I don't know what. And so it was a very easy decision after a couple of years to opt out of that and go and be a full-time parent to our 3 sons. But the quandary of a technical female was year 5 goes by, year 10 goes by, year 15 goes by. What are we going to do about mom, right? And I was standing in the middle school library because I was the chronic volunteer of these 3 kids, and just completely sold out to that and thinking, what are we going to do? And my friend said, do you maybe want to be a teacher? You good with kids, you maybe want to be a teacher. And I said, there's only one problem. I don't really like kids. I like my kids. I like my kids. I don't like yours. Just put another way. Not all day. And the librarian said, gee, the network is really slow today. The LAN was just here. And I said, what? And the LAN in this case is a person. And I said, well, what did they do? And I didn't think anybody would hire me as an engineer anymore. And I'm not wrong. You talk to all my female friends who are former engineers. If you've had a career break, they don't like that. The engineering career field does not like that. They look at you like you got 3 heads and you're not hireable. It's almost like not having a degree at all. And they're the smartest ones. So I didn't think anybody would hire me as an engineer. I'm going to go get my A+ certification. I'm going to repair computers for the school district. That's going to be my job. It'll be fun. It'll pay $20 an hour, not 10. It's going to be fine. And so I went home and signed up for the online class at my community college for A+ because I did not have the courage to go in a classroom and be in person with all those people. And it had been 15 years at that point or close to it. And when I got to the end of the A+ class, my husband the whole time kept saying, you're thinking too small. You're so smart. You're so much smarter than me. You're thinking too small. And I'm like, shut up. What do you know about me? You don't know anything. And my husband is the captain of my cheerleading squad. So he's like, so I got to the end of the A+ class and they had networking theory. And I said, what is that? I know that. I know ones and zeros. I know that. They hammer it into our heads as double E's. So, and the guy goes, you can make more money if you get your Net Plus. And so I just kind of kept going. It was just like potato chips. I just kept going. And I took the security class as a filler. I'm pretty sure I said, I'm not going to work in cybersecurity, but I guess it's kind of important. And so I'll take it as a filler because I was waiting for the Cisco classes to start. And so I walk in and the guy goes, yeah, this class is kind of dry. It's Security Plus. We're going to do a capture the flag. And I'm like, I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not here. This is just a filler. I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, that's fine. It's fine. It's a game. And long story short, I fell straight down the rabbit hole. I fell down like I was made of lead. And I'm like, this is a job. This is a job that pays money. Like that can be used as legal tender in the United States. Like you're, Ashley. So yeah, and I've been falling ever since. So yeah, I ended up getting my first job after getting a bunch of certifications. And like I said, I'm a pen tester, which is the closest thing you can get to a capture the flag. So, and I was born for this. It's just so, I just love it. I just love it. I'm so excited to be here.
That's fantastic. So Alma, you had an interesting transition from being a teacher to cybersecurity. So what got you interested and how'd you make that transition?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, can I just say how incredible Ashley and Jen are? Like their stories are just so amazing. And I feel so honored to be here with everyone. My transition into cybersecurity was like a long, and I feel like it's still happening. Like I'm still transitioning. I'm still pivoting. So I, like Jen, really wanted adventure. I have an undergraduate degree in international relations. I was an intern at the State Department. And I turned down a job at the State Department to teach English internationally. And there was a time in my life where I kicked myself for doing that, but I wanted adventure. I wanted to live in a different country. And the role at the State Department would have kept me in the United States. And I had something that was getting me out right away into another country. And so I went for it. And during that time, I also had kids, and I ended up kind of settling into teaching English as a second language. And I worked with everybody. I worked at private schools, I worked at public schools, I worked in companies, I worked with C-level executives, I worked with children who had been formerly, who had from very vulnerable situations. And during this entire time, I kept seeing how technology was so relevant and kind of like the great equalizer when it came to access to education. And one year I had taken a break from teaching English. I had a little small startup. I was selling a sustainable development, a sustainable product, an alternative to disposable shopping bags. I worked with coconut fiber for a few years, and I used the internet a lot to try and sell my product. I did blogging and content marketing and things like that. But for various reasons, I couldn't continue on. And someone in my network posted about this company in Europe needing English teachers. And I ended up teaching English online using Skype, WebEx, virtual learning platforms, Blackboard, like all that tech stuff that teachers use or had used back then. And that's when I became super curious about tech. And I realized that I'd already been in the tech space because of what I'd been doing with my startup. And I made the decision to take my first computer programming class. I did it online. I struggled. I learned about the very first time I learned about a virtual machine. I learned how to install it. And I kept gathering knowledge that I kept putting into the back and thinking, no, I'm a teacher. I have to keep teaching. And again, this progression it's like a 10-year progression, actually. I ended up teaching computer science at an international baccalaureate school in Mexico City. And that's when I realized, like, I've been wanting to do this. I've been wanting to get more into tech forever. Let me see where I can go. So I did a coding boot camp. And while I was doing the coding boot camp, pretty like just a couple weeks into the coding boot camp, I realized I did not want to be a full stack developer. I did not want to write code. I loved learning. I loved the exercises. I loved learning. I loved working with the command line interface, but I did not want to build software. So someone on LinkedIn said, you have a background in teaching, you should look into cybersecurity. And I said, what the heck is that? And so I started doing research, and I ran into governance, risk, and compliance topics. And I was like, wait a minute, I know what HIPAA, COPA, and FERPA are because I've been working with kids. I know what these things are. I know what these frameworks are. I know what policies are. I know how to do this. And my first official cyber role was when I was working, was contracting. And when I should say my first official cyber role was CISO, because the CTO said that I was the CISO because I was building out the governance protocol, the security governance protocol for this small company. And I was like, there's no way, like, I'm totally new to this. I took it as a complete joke. And that's how I have been using over the past few years. I've been using my skills to just get more and more into cyber. And so far, I've worked as I've used these skills to go into program management with vulnerability management. And I am currently seeing what other opportunities are out there because I really don't want to stay in my comfort zone. So that is how I got into cyber. and I'm still getting into cyber.
Excellent. So Megan, you also came from a teaching background. There's actually a lot of teachers I know in industry or former teachers in industry. Do you mind just sharing what sparked that first interest in cybersecurity for you, Megan?
Yeah, and just to kind of tag into what exactly Alma was saying, it is such a progression. We are always constantly learning, and I think that will continue to be the case for me as well. So for me, it started so young in this idea and mindset of curiosity. And as a kid, I was very early on given the nickname from my family of Curious George from the books, and just loving to experiment and try new things, sometimes in a slightly destructive manner. So we actually went through multiple microwaves as a family. And so I would actually just try different little mini experiments. My mom was a nurse practitioner, and my dad was a database analyst. So I grew up with a lot of tech around me and always being asked questions. Yeah, Ashley saying VCRs for her. I also like to take apart tech and look at what was in them. And so I would actually do different things where it's like, let's microwave this. I've heard you can't microwave certain things. And so I would like microwave CDs. So at the point where we got to the third microwave that I destroyed, my parents decided to put them out of my reach. So I had a lot of fun with those type of things. I fortunately did not burn our house down. So that was a good thing. But it was a lot of tinkering and exploration, and that was mainly encouraged in my household, which was really neat to grow up in that way. And there was a lot of just technology around. And then my grandfather also was in intelligence. And so I'm a cyber threat intelligence analyst. And I feel like that was really formative for me growing up with this idea of a lot of family in career military. My grandfather being in intelligence, he was in the OSS, and he had been career military. And so that was just something that I grew up with knowing. And so being a teacher, loving history, loving understanding how things worked, loving technology, I kept getting drawn into technology, and I had a STEM background, but I also love the humanities. And I like to understand how and why things worked. So I would kind of approach things from like this multifaceted way. When I was a teacher, I would look at both the STEM side of things, but I would always like to give context. So when we were doing science, I would also like to give the historical context around things. Okay, well, let's look at this experiment, but let's look at who the scientist was who discovered it, and let's give some historical context to it, the how and the why. Let's look at maybe the time period around it, if we had the time. And so I was always kind of trying to dig into that. And then because, teachers are not busy enough, I also did IT tech support for the schools. So I kept getting drawn deeper and deeper into the tech side of things. And as I was doing IT tech support, I was, thinking about, hey, I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the problem solving piece to it. Not so much the did you turn it on again and off again. More so like the deeper, higher level problem solving. What if I were to be doing this work? What would that look like? How would I do that? So about 4 years ago, I decided to look into programs for me for actually going back to school. I'm really much more of a formal learning person. And so I started looking into a class here and a class there. And then I started looking into a much more formal learning program. And so I started with a certificate, and then I actually went back and got a second bachelor's degree. And that was really what switched me into a full pivot. And then I call it leaving stealth mode. So I had been kind of like lingering on the edges of being in cybersecurity organizations. And then I started actually very much so fully participating, speaking at conferences, as I've been speaking at conferences as a teacher. And I started, doing things like we all work together as a panel at Women in Cybersecurity. So I started doing a lot more of that. And Ken, that's how you and I met. We met on LinkedIn. And so I started doing all these different things. And I've absolutely loved that, because that's what it's all about. It's about not just being on the sidelines in the community. It's about being participatory in the community, because there's so much knowledge to be gained. So as I was doing this pivot, I switched from being in the sidelines to being an active participant, but it all came from curiosity in my past, and also from my family history as well too.
Excellent. So anyone out there trying to do bad things, just know Megan can get all the intel on you. So watch out. Excellent. So actually, I wanted to go back to you as you kind of think about your cybersecurity career journey. Were there any struggles you had as, you know, when you were trying to get to that first job and even moving into where you are now? Any struggles that you faced?
Yeah, so I was actually like couch surfing and sleeping in like closets and stuff before I actually got my first job in cyber. Living in California was tough, especially like if you're in your early 20s, just trying to get started, you know, trying to find your footing. And if you don't have your act together, like it could be really bad. So trying to couple the fact that the economy crashed while I was in school the first time, leveraging the fact that I only had a couple of certifications, really only had an associate's degree, there were definitely some challenges. And then, of course, being a woman in tech and being a woman of color in tech, you know, I'd go to interviews, knock it out of the park, and they're like, oh, well, you know a lot, but, you just don't have enough operational experience, is what I'd always hear. But we're all struggling to find people. So no one was willing to take that chance on me or invest in me. Until I got to Palo. And even the position I worked before I got to Palo Alto, there's a lot of like bait and switch going on, I think, in the industry at that time, because we got hired as contractors and they told all of us, hey, there's 12 of you, we'll convert all of you to full time. And then about a year goes by and they're like, actually, we have one position for tier 1 and one position for tier 2. Good luck. And it got really cutthroat. And what's really like crazy, and looking back on it, things would happen that obviously should not have been happening in an organization. And I never got the benefit of the doubt, being one of the only women there. So, we'd look at our tickets or something like that, and things were obviously changed, but it never was who changed your ticket. It was, why did you make the mistake? So trying to build that credibility was really hard in the beginning. I can definitely say once I got to Palo Alto, that kind of changed the perspective, because when you have those heavy hitters on your resumes, they like to call them, your credibility goes through the roof. But Palo Alto really did invest in me. And that's what kind of made the difference, is that there are orgs out there, especially now, that want to do the right thing, that want to bring in more women of color. And I think that's great. It's just such a difference from even like 5-6 years ago, when that was not the case at all. Very often I'd be the smartest person in the room and no one would listen to me until I told my, white guy friend to say the same thing. And then all of a sudden it's the best idea they've ever heard. And so just kind of combating that was really tough in the beginning. But now I'm definitely of that mindset, like, hey, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm just going to sit back and see what happens. But I know what I'm talking about. People want to believe women now when they say something in the room. We're technical experts for a reason. And I think the industry has already come a long way in that. But it was definitely the hardest thing ever, being young. A lot of my coworkers were like in their, late 40s, early 50s already. And I'm like 28, trying to explain to them like, hey, this is how, cybersecurity works now, or this is how this threat works. And being told, oh, well, I've been doing it for 15 years. You're new. You don't know anything. That still happens. But that was probably the biggest challenge for me, was just trying to find my voice and really understand that I do know what I'm talking about. I am the subject matter expert in this regard. And again, the industry as a whole is still combating that. And so I think there's still some room for improvement, but doing stuff like this, I think, is a big part of it. Getting out awareness, creating visibility for all of us. I think it's really powerful.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashley. So Jen, same question posed to you as you kind of went through your journey there. Any challenges, any struggles that you've gone through?
Yeah, so many. I mean, I'll pick a couple. One of which was that my resume sucked. You know, I had all these certifications. I got a SANS scholarship that's designed to increase the presence of women in the industry, and I just had no practical work experience. I had no any kind of work experience that belonged on a traditional resume. You know, they say don't put anything that's more than 10 years old. Like all of my work experience was more than 10 years old. So, I mean, it was formatted, it was pretty, but I just had no substance. I had no job on there, and I had lots of potential, but that resume is never going to make it through any kind of filtering. And so I promise no one that can hear me, no one's resume sucked more than mine. I was not a new college grad, so I didn't qualify for internships. I was no longer a newly transitioned veteran. And so I didn't qualify for any of those. And I would just see veterans, we love our veterans. I'm like, except for me, you know, we love women in cybersecurity. I'm like, except for me, you know, they want the young ones, I guess. I mean, I don't want to put it that way, but I'm like, what about returnships? What about people like me? I wish people could understand the quandary of women as they make their way through their career, not simply when they're new college grads. You know, we are all going to be probably part of this dual career thing where we have to make these transitions, or there's going to be some caregiving and things like that. So I just want to, I'm just here to break down barriers for those people, because I just think it's completely BS. You know, there's been no invasion of the body snatchers that I now want to sell real estate or work at Ann Taylor or whatever people do. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but there should be a path. And so with this horrible resume, what did I do? So look, I made a list of 20 companies, and I said, you know what, I want to do cool stuff with cool people, and I'm not getting on the freeway because I have all these great companies right around the corner in San Diego. I forgot to specify no airplane, but that's okay. So, and then, you know, the career pivoters, the people that have been around the block a little bit, our superpower is the interview. I just needed to get the interview, because then they would meet me and they would see how amazing that I am, and they're going to get more than they bargained for than they would with a new college grad. So our superpower is that we know a lot of people. And now I knew a lot of people from Scouts. My kids were all in Scouts. My kids were in band. I mean, my husband has an MBA from a local university, so he knew people. So I made a list of those companies. I went on the website and I looked for the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is this: rec number. So you go to the company's website, you get the rec number for a job that you qualify, maybe. Like if you squint. If I squint, I could like 2 to 3 years, that means 0. 5 years means 2. 7 years means 18 months. And so that's weird, I know, but if you just squint, and maybe. And so then I get the rec number off of Microsoft's website or whatever. Then I go into my network and I go, hey, Joanne, you know, our kids went to preschool together. Your husband works at blah, blah, blah. You know, I found a rec number. I got I got some cybersecurity certifications. I found a job. Does he know the hiring managers? Does he know any hiring managers? And then I would say, do you have an internal referral? Because a lot of companies have internal referrals where they get paid if they bring you in. So you're not asking for anything that's not going to benefit them too. They're going to make like $500 probably, especially female. Come on. So, you know, I just made a list and I spent my time on that. I didn't spend a lot of time applying for jobs that I didn't know anybody. I sometimes, but they wouldn't call me. Even if I was qualified, I just typically did, because of that horrible resume, I didn't get a call. So with that, I got a bunch of interviews. I did, because they would go with my resume and they would hand it to the hiring manager, ideally, not always, but ideally. And that got me to the interviews chair. And the technical, you know, interview and that, I could give a whole talk about that. I did a lot of interviews where I'm like, I don't necessarily want to work at that company, but I want to practice. Like it's a SOC that is too far away. We're not going to move, but I could go interview there and maybe see what they're going to ask. So I did a lot of that, and I had 4 offers. So if I would see people on Twitter going, I have this certification. I have 85 years of experience on help desk, and I can't get an interview. And I'm like, whoa, what makes me think? You know, so a lot of the battle is up there and overcoming fear. And you know what? You just need one person. You just need one person to give you a freaking chance. You know, people are like, how did you become a pen tester right with no experience? You know, I'm like, someone gave me a chance. One person. I had more than one offer, but you know, one person said, sure. Yeah, so you don't need 500 offers. You just need one. And once you have one offer, like Ashley was saying, you have that magical like beginner experience, then you know, you're fine. So you don't make the battle into anything bigger than it is, but the battle's real.
Agree with that. And yeah, as you mentioned, everything starts in your mind. If you can win that battle, it's a lot easier to win the other ones. So thank you so much, Jen. Alma, I want to pass the mic to you. And can you share any challenges you've had as you've gone from teacher now to, cybersecurity expert?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I would love to answer this question. I'd love to give a part 2 to this question in a couple of weeks. But for right now, I would say, so one of the things that, just to pull off of what Jen mentioned, I had a lot of imposter syndrome and fear, particularly around going from a non-technical background with international relations and international teaching to something much more technical. And it's still the space where I struggle with of like, oh, but I'm not technical. You don't have to be technical. And actually at the panel in Cleveland, like Jen and I were like on polar opposites of that, because she's saying, don't be afraid to be technical. And I didn't realize that I was perhaps helping perpetuate this idea for women in particular, that, oh, don't worry, you leave that. And this is something I've heard. I actually heard, don't bother learning how to code, leave the coding to the boys. I was told that, right? So this perpetuating this, don't worry, you don't have to be technical to get into cyber, is something that I think can help people who would like to get into cyber but are afraid they're not technical, but it can also hurt them, because then they think, well, I'm not technical, so I shouldn't try. Like maybe someone is coming from like an education background and would like to become a pen tester, but because they have in their head, well, I'm not technical, they don't go for it. And this is one of the things that you can learn. You can learn to be a pen tester. You can get the training. You can do those things. It's completely possible. And thanks to programs from organizations like Women in Cybersecurity, Women's Society Cyber Jitsu, I'm blanking on another big organization that I found very supportive, not so much on the technical side, but on the networking side, is an organization called Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security, which kind of speaks to my international relations side. But finding these organizations have helped me with these struggles to overcome these different, to overcome the struggles to getting into the field and into the industry. And I just have to say that within the ups and downs and all these struggles, what I have found to be one of the most valuable things is my network. Knowing that I have amazing people like Ashley, Jen, and Megan, and now you can, in my network has been the saving grace of dealing with these struggles. Like that has been my life vest, and just having someone like Jen remind me, hey, it's okay to be technical. Don't fear your technical side. I just really appreciate that, because I am a lifelong learner. I love to learn about technology. I love, a couple of weeks ago with someone else in my network, we did an OSINT CTF. I loved it. I'd never done it before. I would do one every weekend if I could, because I loved it so much. I've done CTFs in the past, and I didn't know anything, and knowing that I could go on to the next level was so encouraging. But even then, I realize now that in order to continue to face those challenges where I might feel like the imposter and how can I do this technical thing, I need my network. I need those folks so I can call up. For example, I don't work in pen testing. I need to have my network of pen testers to call up and say, hey, talk to me about what SIEMs or SIMs, or however we say that acronym. What can you tell me about them? Which ones do you like? Why do you use them? I had a call with a friend of mine who owns his own pen testing company, and he gave me all this really interesting, useful information that even though I'm not going to be in pen testing because I work in cybersecurity, I'm going to be working with pen testers. So I get to pick his brain for that information. So to close that out, the struggles continue. The struggles are real. But for me, like the biggest struggle is just what Jen said, what's in my brain or my mind, not in my brain, what's in my mind, that negative self-talk, the imposter syndrome, that is definitely the biggest struggle for me as I continue on in my career journey in cybersecurity.
Excellent. Thank you, Alma. So Megan, as you transition from STEM teacher to cyber threat intel that you're doing now, any challenges or struggles that you faced as you've kind of made that progression?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things was the uncertainty. I didn't know. I took a leap. I didn't know if I was going to get a job in cybersecurity. I thought it was likely, but I resigned from my position as a teacher without a job. I gave notice, and actually, Alma and I met as conference associates in Black Hat. And she knows we were in Las Vegas, and I was interviewing for roles, and I think I was waking up at like 5:30 in the morning to take interviews. And it was one of those things where it was like, I don't know, maybe these will yield something, maybe these won't. And so it was really one of those things of like, I was hopeful. I also, my kind of, safety net, if you will, is that the nation really needs teachers. So even though I didn't want to necessarily go back to my role of being a teacher, I figured a school would likely need me if I had to go back to being a teacher if I wasn't able to find a job in cybersecurity. But yeah, that sense of uncertainty was very kind of scary for me of, will I be able to find a job? I did, and I won't like state the organization at all, because that would be very unprofessional, but I did receive a job offer, my first job offer, and I turned it down. And I'll state one of the details and explain why I turned it down. So the first job offer I received was for becoming a intern, even though the way the job was stated was I would be in charge of all the products for this organization. So it was like, you will be in charge of every cyber product for this. People will answer to you, and you will like be running with all the things. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Like I was, kind of excited about it. And then they said, okay, we're going to start you off on 3 months probation because you're pretty new, and we're going to do all these things. And then I was like, okay, I'm waiting to hear like what the title is. Like they're going over all the details, and they're like, and then you'll be an intern. So I turned them, actually I counter offered. So I didn't turn them down exactly. I said, I in writing, I said, this is interesting. It seems like that this role is actually this. Would that be of interest to title it this and compensate it this? And they chose to not take my counter offer. So I think that also kind of comes in the sense of career pivoting. If maybe I had been 20, I might have just been elated to have taken that. But it really seems like something where they were trying to take advantage of me being really new to the field, or possibly me being a woman. I don't know. But I was really floored that was an offer that they were giving anyone. But at first I was very excited to get a job offer. And then I was astounded that was the job offer. But yeah, I would say that for me, one of the things that happened to me was uncertainty, that was a big up and down. And then I was very excited to, of course, make it into the field. So make it into our industry. And I would agree. I'm going to tag in with what Alma was saying. I think our community and being part of the network is such a huge part of everything. So, and I'm really glad that we're all here together sharing our stories.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, networking is so critical. And like Ashley mentioned in the chat, it's that company's loss. They didn't get you. That's their loss. So they're still looking for an intern, by the way, for everyone out there, probably.
Yeah, I
An
would
intern
say like
CISO.
I would say like it's maybe their loss, but like it's definitely my gain, because if that's the way they're stating the position, like that's not the only red flag that would be for there.
Oh,
Yeah, that
100%.
was the red flag at the very, like, even before starting, right, Meg?
Yeah, so many things.
Excellent. So Ashley, want to go back to you. Any final thoughts or advice you wanted to share for the audience out there that might be looking at cybersecurity careers as an option, or they're in a current role that maybe sucks? Maybe they're a CISO intern like Megan was offered. Any advice or final thoughts for those people?
The best piece of advice I think I can give is that, one, don't be afraid to try. I think we can all appreciate that half of our own internal imposter syndrome is just being scared of the no, or being scared of that moment of failure. And, as a former martial artist, I was super competitive. You're always scared of the loss, but you can't be. You take that and you learn from it and you can improve yourself. But the other thing is that don't discount your soft skills. I'm super personable. I'm super bubbly. I'm always like, the life of the party and really happy. But when I train or when I'm teaching, because of that enthusiasm, my company was able to say, oh, well, we can take that and just teach you the technical piece and you can build from that. And I really feel like the tech can always be taught, but the soft skills can't. So being more T-shaped and making sure that you've actually got those skills to be able to talk to people, understanding, how to explain things to a non-technical audience. Those skills are really, really valuable. And I think more people, especially veterans, I always encourage all veterans, do some practice on your soft skills, whether it's a speaking class or just learning how to work with different types of people. If you can nail that, it opens a lot more opportunity. So especially as women, we have tons of those great soft skills. So never discount that. Always be willing to kind of showcase that, especially if you're looking to pivot. Maybe you're in that CISO intern position and you want to do more. Being able to articulate that you not only can see the big picture, but you're also okay with kind of getting in there and doing the hands-on piece, like it'll take you really far.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. Jen, any final thoughts or advice from your end?
Yeah, turns out going from parenthood to pen tester was a kind of a steep curve. And so my psychological battle continued my first year in my first job there. And you know what? Nobody understands this stuff the first time. Nobody understands that technical topic the first time. You just think that, oh, they're the majority gender or whatever. They must understand this stuff. Like when they wake up in the morning, they don't. They just keep watching that video over and over again until they get it. So don't think it's not for you. If you watch that video and you're like, I don't get that. You just kind of have to be pretty resilient. Psychological battle, when you're the only, I was at my first job out of the gate. It was at a really nice company, 2 different teams, real nice guys. Everybody's really nice. It wasn't about them not being nice or brotherly or whatever, but I was in 2 different teams where I was the only female. And I got this from another minority group I watched their seminar on, and they said, they're not better than you. I wrote, they're not better than you on a sticky note, and I put it on my monitor. And I just needed to see that. I know you all think we're made of, bulletproof glass or whatever, but I needed to see that statement. And then one day, after about a year, I got up to go get a glass of water, and my foot hit something on the ground, and it was that sticky note. And I thought, oh, I guess I don't need that sticky note anymore. And so I just want to say that when you're the only, because a lot of us are, only whatever, you have that psychological static, and it has nothing to do with people being nice or welcoming. I just really haven't been. I have a few stories, but nothing really there. It was just, I was just surprised by that. Everybody fails. Everybody fails. At the end of a string of failures is success. So, the problem with job hunting is that the success comes at the very end of the journey. There's not a lot of, props along the way. You just need that psychological support. You need your posse. You need a group of people that will say, you can do it. You can do it. They'd be lucky to get you. I just think people need to be aware of that, because they tend to think, I'm running into this like resistance, and it must mean it's not for me. And it's just so not, it's just such a lie. It's just such a lie. And yeah, I guess, and I have my stories about lowball offers too. I had a lowball offer once they realized when I got my degree. They asked me at the very last interview, the pay had been confirmed twice, and I killed the technical interview. I killed it. 9 men for an hour. I killed it. And they confirmed that pay. And then the director asked me when I got my degree. And I was so surprised I answered him instead of saying, none of your business. And then the offer changed to like about a 30% drop. And I already had an offer that I took. And I said, thank you very much. Thank you very much, but I will be declining your generous offer. I never want to burn bridges or whatever, but I now make twice what that guy offered me. So you need to know your value and be well networked so that you have options, because options are power. So you want to get multiple offers. Options are power.
That's some really great advice, Jen. Alma, anything you'd like to share with the audience? Any final advice?
Wow, this has been great advice. So like I'm taking notes right now. I would say final advice, just to reiterate what we said on the panel, if you want to get into cyber, do your research. So what really worked for me was the NICE framework that comes out of NIST. And it's like all color coded, and it's really cool because you can play around with different skills and roles and job descriptions. And I did that for a while, and that helped me realize what part of cyber I wanted to be in. But also don't disregard your other skills. Ashley mentioned soft skills. Jen mentioned your past experience. Don't disregard that. That's also helpful. And one of the things that I have noticed that I have gotten better at doing is when I'm asked a question like, what is your experience with X? I think, well, I don't have that particular experience. And then I go back and I was like, oh no, they're asking me about a time I did this thing, and I have done this thing, and I did it in this situation. So it's getting really good at, I guess, doing the own research on your own experience, documenting it, writing it. This amazing CISO out of the blue gave me a document that it's a document that he created that he's used to get all of his jobs. And there's nothing technical on the document. It is a document where you tell your story. So it just is a list of questions that the instructions are go through and answer each question. And I have done that, and I continue to do that because my story continues to change. As time goes by, I get new experience, and that document helps me stay fresh when I take an interview. I know how to answer questions. And just to reiterate again what Jen said, have that tribe, have that group of people who will help you with that imposter syndrome. So in closing, do your research, build out a strategy. Don't be afraid to modify your strategy if you need to, and have your champions and advocates they're like my key takeaways for anyone who is interested in getting into cyber or pivoting into this space. So thank you so much, Ken, for having me here on this amazing talk.
No, thank you, Alma. And I think everyone wants a copy of that document you mentioned now. I see the chat blowing up and everything. So we'll circle around after the show and see if it's something you're willing to share. And we'll let everyone know how to get a copy of that. Megan, you get the final say. So any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share about your journey or just in general for the audience?
Yeah, I think really a key takeaway, and this is a theme that ran throughout, is networking is so powerful. but a lot of people don't necessarily know how to start networking, right? So we've talked about social skills. I like to call them essential skills because they are incredibly powerful to help you throughout your journey. And you may have these in abundance, or it may be something that you don't have as much of and you want to practice them. So I'd like to actually share a little bit about how I work on networking in a really strategic way. So if you are doing networking and you're doing this online digitally, you can do this and you can connect with people on LinkedIn or Twitter, and maybe you're going to click, connect or follow. And maybe you just click that button. What that does, right, is it just sends that connection request and that's it. But what if you actually sent a message and you were really intentional about it? You did like just a very brief intro stating who you were and why you were making that connection request. And what if you did a little bit of research and you looked at, hey, who is this person I'm trying to connect with and why? And maybe you asked, would you be willing to have a 15-minute virtual coffee chat with me? That's what I did a lot of when I was trying to pivot into the industry, because I knew one of three things would happen. They either would not respond to me, they would respond favorably, and I could have a 15-minute chat with that person where I could actually introduce myself, and that could lead to who knows what. Or they would just, say no, right? Like, what are the other options? So those are the three options. So I would really encourage anyone that is trying to build out their network to actually be more active in the building. Because if you're really passive and you're just hitting connection requests, what does it do? It just builds up your LinkedIn number, but you're actually not actively building a network. Sure, you have a higher LinkedIn number, but you didn't actually help out your network. You didn't actually build a network. It's completely different if you're at an in-person conference. If you're at an in-person conference, you actually want to go up and talk to people then too, because you want to get to know people and meet people. And it's not transactional. It's just you're going and meeting people and you're trying to see, hey, this is who I am. Hey, this is who you are. Maybe we have some things in common. Maybe we don't. Maybe later on down the line, I can connect you with Ashley, or I can connect you with Alma. Maybe the two of you have something in common. Maybe we all have something in common. Maybe we all do a panel together later on down the line. Who knows? Maybe it leads to some really cool project we all do. So it's not that it's transactional. It's not that like I'm asking a favor, someone's asking a favor. It's more like it's about building this community. Like earlier, we were like Alma was mentioning like, hey, I'm going to know some pen testers and then they're going to share knowledge. The more you build your network, the more you can share out the building of knowledge. And so that to me is what one of the big things is about. It's about figuring out how to be strategic and actually do these things. How do you build a network? How do you use your essential skills? And so that's kind of one of the key takeaways that I wanted to share. And I felt like that was really helpful for me. When I was actually job hunting, what I did was I gave a talk a couple years ago, and there's a visual graphic recording artist, Ashton, who does like drawings of talks. I would share that panel and say, hi, I'm Megan. I gave this talk about career pivoting to cybersecurity. And I would share that panel. So it was a visual of who I was and what I was doing. And so that kind of gave people a little intro to who I was. And then when I was job searching, I would say, hi, I'm Megan. Here's a talk I gave. I noticed that you posted this job on this job board. Could you tell me more about this? So once again, not necessarily transactional. I wasn't giving them my resume. I wasn't saying, hey, give me a job. I was saying, you posted this job. Could you tell me more about it? So those are kind of some ways that you can really try to state who you are, be very succinct, and like not say, hey, can you be my mentor? Hey, can you do this? You're trying to build that relationship some more, and trying to really build that network as well. So those are a couple of different pieces I wanted to leave as key takeaways. And that's about it that I had. So thank you, everyone. And thank you all for joining today too.
Yeah, excellent, excellent advice, Megan. And I think so many people have networking wrong. They focus on the transactional, like gimme, 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 forgetting that it's a human on the other side that we need to give before we can get. And I will say that, just tagging on to what Megan mentioned, be direct in what you're wanting. How she mentioned, hey, I saw this job posting. Can you tell me more about it? I had a young woman, it's been a few months now, but she reached out saying, hey, I've been applying for jobs for months. Can't find anything. She's trying to get her first job. Within a couple of weeks, I had connected her with an organization and they hired her. So tap into the value of your network. That's what a network can do for you. The job market in cybersecurity as an industry, most of the jobs are found behind the scenes. It's not for you applying for hundreds of jobs and, fingers crossed, 27 certs and 96 degrees. That stuff doesn't usually work to get you the job. It's, hey, Megan, I noticed you work at company X and I saw they have this job there. Do you know the hiring manager? Jen mentioned that earlier, right? She reached out directly to a bunch of companies where she knew somebody, said, hey, do you know the hiring manager, right? But Jen didn't reach out and say, gimme, gimme, gimme. She reached out and said, hey, we have some kind of connection from the past, right? We've built a network and I noticed you work there, or your husband works there, somebody works there. I'm looking at this job. Do you know the hiring manager, right? So it's all about, it's just humanity. Sometimes with technology, we forget about that. Build real relationships. Those relationships will take you a lot of places. And you'll find that instead of applying for jobs for 5 years, you end up applying for a job and it takes a couple of weeks and all of a sudden you have your dream job, right? But that's the power of real networking. So Megan, and thanks to you for sharing that bit of wisdom. Thanks for everyone for sharing the wisdom on this session today. Had a great time. And hopefully we've helped some people out there viewing this. And we look forward to working alongside you in your cybersecurity career.